Hello, Stickasaurus here, and today we are going to go over filling, smoothing, sanding, and priming your 3D printed helmet. As you saw in our last video, we got the orientation. Hopefully you got it printed in one piece, depending on your printer settings and all that. But we have this Green Ranger screen scan here. I'm going to show you what putty I use, how I sand it, what grits I use, and then we'll show you how I fill or prime it. And we'll go the whole process till we get ready to wet sand it. That'll be in this video. So usually I just go right on the raw print. I've tried sanding it down smooth. Some people do that before they put putty on it. Sometimes they'll sand it smooth, put primer on it, and carry on that way. This works for me. You'll always find something that works for you better. But this is what I use. I use the Bondo glazing putty. You can find it on Amazon. There's the barcode if you're interested. I'll put a link down in the description as well. We just need this, some acetone, which you can get pretty much anywhere. Paper cup, has to be paper. Don't use plastic. Don't use like the Dixie cups with the wax lining. Just get regular, cheap paper cups. The plastic cups will melt. You'll have a mess. And a cheap brush. I usually get them at the dollar store. I got these on Amazon, like a pack of 20 or something. And I use popsicle sticks to stir it up. So all you need to do is just spot putty in your cup, a little bit of acetone. Hopefully you can see. It's probably a little too dark. And then you want to stir it up to it's like a milky consistency, maybe a little thicker than that, like not quite glue, but like watered down glue. I don't know how to explain it. Like what you use for paper mache. Pretty good, but that should be fine. See how runny that is. And you just take your brush and brush it on. And you gotta work a little quick because once the acetone starts evaporating, which it will do, so this dries really quick and it'll start thickening up in your cup real quick. You can always add more acetone. It's not a huge deal, but you'll start getting thicker on your brush and it won't spread as well. I mean, obviously. But you just want to do this for the entire print. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry about making it smooth. We're going to sand this all. You just want a nice finish coat all over it. And once you get used to it, you can knock out a whole helmet in like 5 minutes. Where there's recessed areas and angles, you want to try to like push it up and out. You can always take your finger in there and smooth it a little bit if you have to. And you don't want putty to build up around corners and stuff. People will notice, look bad. So like right in there, we want to get that right there. Around the mouth is another big one to watch for, but sorry, I'm doing this like standing up. I don't usually. I'm just doing this real time so you see how quick it is. Again, like hard edges you want to try to keep. That's kind of important. And you can always sand it out. This stuff's super sandable. It's kind of the point of it. So it's not a huge deal, but you don't want to lose all your definition with too many coats of putty. It's probably the one big issue I see with people that use putty. They put it too thick and you just lose your details. But we'll go through in here, and when we're sanding it, we'll etch out all these lines again and everything. This is actually a really good screen scan. They're not all quite this beautiful. This is Aaron Ferris's fixed up one. It's truly something special, but it doesn't really matter what print. You can always use the same technique. So I'm gonna let this dry. You could probably sand it in like 15 minutes. I let it set at least a day. or half a day. Depends on how much of a hurry I am. But you know, I only work on the weekends, so it just works out for me. But we'll get this, and then I will show you how we sand it. So your putty's dry. So for sanding, I pretty much use 3 grits, at least for this. I have a air sander here with 1-inch discs. If that's not an option for all that, I used these before, just palm sanders from Walmart. I went through so many of these just because I sand so much, but if you're just doing 1 or 2 helmets, not a big deal, perfectly fine. The grits I use exclusively, usually about 240, 220. This is the main grit I use for everything. Sometimes some 120 or 80 for stuff that's really rough that I need to take down some material, but very rarely. And 320 is the other grit I use a good bit. Usually, once I do a coat of hand putty, once we get there, if it's a lot, I'll go over it with some 320 with the air sander just to knock it down so I don't kill my hands sanding. But the main sanding I do is with 240. So after I get putty on it, we will use 240. Anything I have to hand sand that I can't get into with the air sander, I use some 100. Just because I don't have to kill my hands trying to sand it. This is this gel back sandpaper. It's amazing. If you can find it, highly suggest it. It's 3M gel back. I've been using this piece for like years. I will go through, we will sand this real quick. Again, just some 240, go over the helmet, do the back and everything. I also use needle files to get into the detail lines so you don't lose them as you're filling with putty and everything. So for example, we have up in here all these lines. I'll just take it and scrape it off. So you can scrape. Another technique is to like away from you and then like back and forth motions. If you slip and you scratch the helmet, not a big deal. I usually just sand it right away with some 240 or whatever and then carry on. Look around the teeth you want to dig out. You don't have to get too crazy, just so you get the nice lines. It's going to help you in the long run and it's going to make it look a lot crisper. Around the mouth is a big one. I mean, usually I do this after I go over everything and sand it first, but it doesn't super matter. If you're doing stunt visor or anything with holes, make sure you dig out your holes. We will cut this visor out eventually here, so I'm not super worried about it. It's kind of hard to tell because it's so not really filled or anything yet, but you can see in here. So we'll just I'm just going to do that until you fill. And honestly, if some of your lines get filled in, it's not the end of the world. Figure it out later. It's not a big deal. So we'll sand this, and then we will talk about primer. Got your helmet all nice and sanded. If you miss some spots, don't worry. This is the first pass. We're going to do a bunch of putty sanding primer, putty sanding primer. You can do that pretty much to your heart's content. But now it's time to get some filler primer on there, and this is what really helps fill in all the scratches and everything, and like shallower layer lines. And this is what's going to start building up so we get a nice smooth finish. Now there's a lot of filler primer you can use. I'm not the expert on all of them. There's a couple I haven't used, but these are the ones I have used. This one's been big recently. It is the U-Pole filler primer. You can get this at like AutoZone is where I got it, or O'Reilly's. Duplicolor filler primer. This is kind of expensive. Again, you can get all these at automotive stores. And my personal favorite, the Rust-Oleum filler primer. You can get this at Walmart. It's easily to get on Amazon as well. And make sure you get the filler primer and not this. 2-in-1 filler and sandable. This fills a lot better. It's much higher build than this. I don't like this. It dries weird for me, so I got this by accident a couple times. You got to make sure you get the filler primer, not the 2-in-1 filler and sandable. If you got this, you can make it work. If it's all you have and can't afford another can, you can make it work. but this is the superior one. Out of all three of these, I would probably get the filler primer. That's my favorite. And probably the U-pull and the Duplicolor I like the least. But again, that's just me. You'll have to test them, see what you like the best. There's a bunch of videos out there comparing them on filling 3D prints and all that. If you want to go check out videos like that, just search up what filler primer to use. But I like the high build Rust-Oleum. It dries relatively quickly. You can wet sand it right away. All these it's kind of the same. It depends on how thick of a coat you put on and all that. The U-pull spray is weird. That's why I don't like it. And the Duplicolor, I found it kind of runny and took forever to dry. The Rust-Oleum filler primer, I'm just so used to, like I know how to deal with it. But that's my go-to. But all these will work, absolutely. And they're all varying prices. I think this is like 14 bucks. This is like 12. You can find these for like $8. So it is a little cheaper, but they all will do the same thing if you can only find one. But again, I recommend the filler primer Rust-Oleum. That's my go-to. But all we're gonna do is spray it on the helmet. You can go as thick as you want, as heavy you want. If you get runs on it, it doesn't matter. We're gonna sand it off. Don't fret about it. Don't think about it too much. Sometimes, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, if there's like a little trouble spot, I'll go a little heavy on there with the filler primer, and hopefully it fills a little more in before we sand it off. But yeah, we'll just put the filler primer on. I let it sit usually a day. You don't have to. You can wait till it's dry to the touch, and then you can try to sand it. If you sand it, you start getting, like it starts looking glossy and not actually like sanding, then you know it's not cured yet. You need to let it wait. But I'm just gonna put a coat of filler primer on this, and then we will move on to our next coat of spot putty. Same as we did before. We'll sand it again with 240, same as we just did, and then another coat of filler primer, and then we'll see how it looks. Usually once we get there, we'll either do hand putty, which I will show you once we get to that stage, or I'll do another coat. I'll let you know what we end up doing, but that's just pretty much all there is to it. And there's our first coat of filler primer. Just wanted to show you how it looks. It's not perfect. You can still see a bunch of layer lines up here and all that. Right in here I see some. But honestly, wet primer makes anything look good. Just wait till it dries and you'll start to see all your imperfections. Not a big deal. Like I said, we're just going to do another entire coat of spot putty all over it. So don't even worry about how it looks right now. Once we get to the second or third coat of filler primer on here, then you're going to have to start seeing what we got to touch up. But that's all there is to it. And here we are. After all that work, it's time to do the hand putty and wet sand it. All I did is just take putty straight out of the tube, and I just go in and find the cracks. Look here, we'll do here. So I don't know if you can see, so my hands are wet. See those lines right there? Just take some putty, and then just smooth it out. You don't have to worry too much, but if you get too much on, it's just a lot more you gotta hand sand off, and it's a headache. So just do that for any scratches and stuff you see around the helmet. You don't have to worry too much about getting all of them, just like the deeper ones. Like up here in the ridge we had some, and the gem didn't look great. We're just gonna sand this, wet sand it with some 320, 400, and 600. Just move up the grits after it feels all smooth everywhere. So we get a little spot here. You wanna wear a glove when you do this too. I'm just doing it real quick. So we'll just get this wet sanded. I'll show you that. I'll show you what it looks like after, before we move to the paint, and there'll be time to continue on to the next tutorial. And we are all done wet sanding. I usually rinse it off after I didn't get there yet. But as you can see, everything looks pretty good. Everything's smooth to the touch. There's no rough spots. Everything is feeling pretty nice. So you can prime this again if you desire. You can even prime it again, wet sand it again with a higher grit. I haven't really found it to be necessary. I usually just rinse it off, let it dry, and then we move on to the paint. So that will be in the next video where we start painting this. If you have any questions, leave them down below and we will try to address them.